to be here to introduce you Chardonnay and Un-oak Chardonnay. That's also a subject that I'm going to talk with Andy about, the difference between Un-oak Chardonnay and Chardonnay, also the beautiful terroir that he's working with, which is Mendocino. And this is what we're going to have today. So here we go. So welcome to Andre DuVigneaud. Thank you so much to be part of this event. Everybody has a glass of Chardonnay. And Andy, thank you again to be here. Okay, let's introduce yourself properly. Please tell us your background and a little bit more about the program of Be Enter. How did it start and where you're making your wine?
Thank you for having me on here, having us on here.
I grew up here in, you can see behind me the
chateau behind here. This is where I was born. I grew up here. I learned to make wine in Anderson Valley. That's where we're making wine currently. I worked at Navarro Vineyards for 10 years. And now I make wine with my beautiful wife, Elisa, for Be Enter Wine. We have Chardonnay in front of us. This is
Tell us a little bit more about Mendocino, north of California, Mendocino. Why making wine from this area, and what do you think that Mendocino bring over to the glass?
So Mendocino is a bunch of small little vineyards in very rough, rugged terrain on the north coast of California. The wines are very special and unique. And
it's about climate, it's about proximity to the ocean, and it's about aspect for the.
Go ahead.
Place that's very much about climate and about the fauna and about the redwood trees, and so. Okay.
Can't hear.
Can you hear me?
On Zoom, it's difficult, but we have a conflict with Instagram and FaceTime. So if you don't mind, people on Zoom, reach out with the cell phone. If you can actually reach out for us on the cell phone and put Instagram live, that where you're going to have the whole sound system, as we have a conflict with both systems, which I was wondering about that, but that's the way it is. So wine_street_online to get the sound system. If you have a phone, get yourself on Instagram to get the full sound system, as I can just turn it off the system on Instagram. Or maybe Andre, try to turn off your sound on Instagram all the way down on your phone. Okay, and can you talk now?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead now.
All right. So we're talking about Chardonnay and California expression of Chardonnay.
Go ahead. Mendocino. Mendocino, my friend.
Okay, so this we have a bunch of different Chardonnays. This one's it's fermented in a large neutral oak foudre, and the expression of the Chardonnay comes through in a very, very nice, elegant, classic way. The clones are actually Italian clones of Chardonnay that were developed in Italy between the wars, which are light and floral, and they really go well with the fermentation in the foudre, but they would be overpowered by oak. So I really like this expression. You get the real light, crisp, clean, classic expression of Chardonnay. This vineyard is overlooking the Pacific Ocean at 2,600 feet elevation, so half-mile elevation in deep soils, surprisingly deep for being on top of a ridge. The farmer dry farms the grapes and has been growing these for these are about 35-year-old vines.
Nice. Now, tell me, you're buying this grape from the Mariah Vineyard. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Mariah Vineyard and also the technique of growing? Is it organically grown, and is it dry farming? And if they are, tell us why it's so important and what you think it bring over to the wine.
So this is a sustainable vineyard, but it's not certified organic.
Okay.
Because we buy our fruit from all of vineyard sources, we like to try and work with the growers to grow organically, but I know that he doesn't use a lot of bad fungicides, but he refuses to get any certification. There's a lot of old timers in Mendocino County who don't like any sort of certification. So,
okay. Is it dry farming?
Yeah, it is dry farming. It's on top of a ridge, it's hard to farm dry farm in California on a ridge, but he does have surprisingly deep soils up there. It also is so close to the ocean that it's much cooler during the day, and it's above the fog line, so it has warm nights, cool days, and the dry farming forces the roots of the vine to grow really deep, which gives you that clean minerality and expresses that very unique location.
Yeah. So just to explain to people watching us and doesn't know what dry farming means, so dry farming is about not putting any water, any irrigation whatsoever in your vineyard. All the vineyards in Europe, in France, are dry farming, as is illegal to put the water and to irrigate the vineyard. Most of the California winery or vineyard are not dry farming because they want to regulate the numbers of water that you have. But like Andy said, having the chance to work with the vineyard and dry farming is not maybe getting as much fruit than you want, but it is definitely getting the roots getting deeper because the vine need to stress out and the roots need to go deep to the soil to actually grab the water underneath. So those roots, instead of going when they have too much water on the side, they go all the way deep. And when you have a very, very deep roots, the roots will grab all the minerality and the strength to the vine. Also, the vine will become very, very much stronger, so it will produce more minerality and freshness to the glass than we're getting here, which is very well executed, Andy. This is amazing Chardonnay, and the nose over here, it's very expressive, but again, the minerality. And I also have on the nose this saline influence from the ocean, then bring over on the nose. It's very saline on the nose. You're starting to watering your mouth, and you want to drink more of this wine. You definitely want to drink the wine. So well done on that. Delicious. And yeah, tell me a little bit more about your structure. How many different wines you make? It looks like you're making a lot because you're a fanatic winemaker and you love to. And we have this conversation in the past. But also, how many different cases you make a year? And why the Bee Hunter?
So we make about 2,500 cases a year. And the downside to not growing our own grapes is we don't have quite as much control in the vineyard. But the upside is we get to choose the best vineyards and we get to make lots and lots of different wines. So we variously have about 28 different bottlings, either vineyard or different varieties. And so we get to buy grapes from the warm part of Mendocino County inland. We get to buy grapes from right next to the ocean. We get to buy grapes from the top of the ridge and the bottom of the ridge, which allows us to paint a broad picture of all of the terroir of Anderson Valley.
Okay, what is the typicity of Mendocino and the Anderson Valley? What are you getting as far as weather, altitude? What's that bring over to the wine?
So the North Coast has the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate, and they're sliding. But there's also a Juan de Fuca Plate that's rotating and making folded valleys that go down the North Coast. Further inland, the valleys run north-south, but along the North Coast section, the valleys run from the northwest to the southeast, and that's the prevailing wind direction. And so these valleys fill up with fog. The wind blows the fog in from the Pacific in the afternoon and evening. And so the defining character for these wines is how the fog and the wind influences the ripening of the grapes. And Valley Floor has lots of fog, Ridge has lots of wind, but you have every combination in between. At our house here, we're on top of a ridge, but there's no wind, but there's also no fog. So we have a unique climate. But if you look across the valley, they have equally no fog because they're at a higher elevation, but they have gusseted by wind, and the vineyards up there produce Pinot Noirs that are like black tea and light and very mineral driven with almost no fruit. The Pinot Noirs on this side are much more dark fruit, and the Pinot on the Valley Floor is very red fruit, tomato vine.
Right.
Chardonnay, it's a little bit harder because basically once Pinot became synonymous with Anderson Valley, that was the grape of Anderson Valley, nobody planted Chardonnay anymore. So the more modern plantings are predominantly Pinot Noir. So we're very lucky to have some of the remaining old Chardonnay plantings in Anderson Valley. And I'm hopeful that's going to change as people realize that there's as much interest in modern plantings of Chardonnay as there are of Pinot Noir.
What's the fog does to the grape? What is important you feel then it's a good sign to grow grapes when you have fog?
So the fog cools the grapes down very quickly. And so when the fog comes in, the grapes get very cool. And so as the grapes are cool, they're producing different flavors inside of the grape. The downside to the fog, of course, is that it leaves a little bit of moisture on the grapes in the morning, which fungus loves. And so we have to fight that. And that's the dance along the edge of where it's possible to grow grapes, is how much of that cool climate, coastal foggy influence you can have with also still getting full physiological and sweetness, physiological ripeness and sugar ripeness in the wine.
Okay, good. Which character of wine do you feel, compared to Napa and Sonoma, do you feel that you're producing in Mendocino?
Well, Mendocino is so broad. When you look at the northern end of the Russian River in Redwood Valley, they're producing big, bold, dark red wines that are comparable to Alexander Valley, and a lot of those grapes end up in Sonoma Cabernet or Sonoma or Napa Cabernet. There really isn't as a cool a climate as Anderson Valley anywhere in Sonoma. When you get close to the coast in Sonoma, it's quite hilly. So Fort Ross Seaview is very close to the ocean, but the character of this wine is much more like a Chardonnay from Fort Ross Seaview. They don't have that valley close to the ocean the same way that we do. So this one I would say expresses the similar Chardonnay to some of the Flowers or some of the other Sonoma Coast Chardonnay producers that are producing high elevation, but right next to the Pacific Ocean.
Okay. And also, I believe that the value of Mendocino wines are definitely there, compared to the prices in Napa and Sonoma. And
Yes, unfortunately.
I will say the north of California with the cold climate, we bring over Chardonnay and bring more of the Chablis style, if I may say that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the corollary to Old World wines is much closer than a corollary to Napa or Sonoma, which are just so much warmer than Anderson Valley. This really is a cool climate wine, and very similar in degree days to Chablis. You know, if you put a weather station in Chablis or at Mariah Vineyard, they might not have the same shape, but they would have the same number of degree days.
Got it. Now, the vinification of this wine, you mentioned a few times about the food, which bring over, I believe, the texture of the wine. So you have some creaminess, some lemon tart, some meringue on the palate, but you also still have this beautiful minerality. And I don't feel any wood on this one. Is any aging on this wine, or is it still and still, or what is it?
No, we ferment and leave it in the foudre for 9 months, and then it goes to bottling. It's a neutral foudre, so it doesn't have any oak flavor left. And in any case, the food is much larger, and so the ratio of volume to surface area is smaller. But yeah, this is a neutral food brew that ferments really well. It ferments a nice.
And do you think this creaminess as well is also has something to do with this amazing new? I mean, this is a very unique clone. So for the people listening to us and doesn't know what's a clone is actually one of the species of the grape. So it's a Chardonnay, and the clone we bring a little specification, a different DNA, but very close to all the Chardonnay. So all the Chardonnay will have the same DNA, but each clone will have a little difference on the DNA. So what this clone is about?
I think the creaminess is a combination of the clonal selection, but also the yeast lees aging 9 months. Yeah. And we don't stir, we don't do anything. We just, we cover, we remove the fermentation bung and put a solid bung in the foudre, and we don't do anything. We don't add any sulfur, we don't open it, we don't top it, we don't stir it, we just let it go. And the natural convection currents inside the foudre create it brings the lees and compounds that create that mouthfeel, that richness. You know, it's a crisp, dry wine, but it has a little bit of that richness, a little bit of that roundness. And I would say that's the yeast lees decomposition, but as well as the Trentino clone. Although when we taste the wine right at the end of fermentation, it's tart, it's tight, it's a very lean wine, so that expresses itself much more over time in the barrel. So
Trentino clone is originally from Italy?
It was developed by it's two clones, VCR10 and Trentino were developed by the University of Friuli between the wars. They brought over French selections and refined them for the Italian climate. Unfortunately, that's very limited plantings now.
It's very rare.
Yeah, as the popularity of Pinot Grigio sort of dominated everything, there was the Chardonnay was pulled out and not replanted.
Do you know any other vineyard than Mariah Vineyard than doing this clone Trentino?
There's actually a fair number. Any of the vineyards that were planting UC Davis selections in the early 80s probably got a couple of these vines. Most of them are just picked with the rest of the French clones and sort of end up in a big Chardonnay. But a lot of the Sonoma County Chardonnay producers that are quite famous, there are probably 1 to 2% of the Italian clones in this wine.
Nice.
But we're lucky enough to be able to harvest all of it ourselves and make it into a very interesting, elegant wine.
So this one is about 220 cases made.
Yes.
And this is obviously the 17 vintage that we're testing right here. Do you think it's an advantage to have a 17 vintage than the brand new release vintage? Do you think those wines age a little?
Absolutely. I think for all of the wines that I'm making, that the barrel age, extra barrel age for some of our red wines, and extra bottle age for all of the wines really brings up the character and the structure and makes a well-integrated wine. The integration on this wine is very nice right now.
Yeah, I really feel so. Yeah. The integration, the texture, the balance of the wine. I definitely think that it's just brilliant. You have the acidity, the freshness, but you also have the creaminess. And I really believe that it's represent Mendocino Ridge in the best way. Now, I'm pretty sure, Andy, we talked that in the past, but I want to share that with the people watching us. What is your feeling about Chardonnay made in France, in Burgundy, than the Chardonnay made in your region, in Mendocino? Where do you see the similarity and where do you see the difference? Tell us a little bit more your vision of that.
Well, so I think California Chardonnay was this monolith of one style of Chardonnay, and the better producers are trying to emulate what's coming out of France. And the problem with trying to compare directly with Burgundy is that some of the best soils with some of the best winemaking practices paired with the best barrels. And it's if you were to say, I'm going to make my wine taste just like a Grand Cru, it's not really an achievable goal. But I think learning from what the French have learned, as well as expressing our own unique terroir, is our best approach. So I think California Chardonnay finally is lots of different things, when not that long ago it was oaky and it was buttery and it was kind of yummy. So I'm glad that we're broadening out, and it's not just Anderson Valley, but all across the state there's producers trying to make something that's a little more interesting and a little more something that someone's going to really remember, rather than being just something that's nice to have it with dinner and then you forget about it.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that we're getting close to achieving that sort of complexity and that.
No, I see in 27 years here in this country, obviously when I come up first, I was testing some of those first wine coming up to California, and that was nothing that was really exceptional, except maybe the Mondavi family when they start doing Opus One, and I was very impressed with their technique that they got from the French family, from the Rothschild family. Long story short, I believe in 25 years, the industry of California wine and the winemaker like yours bring over the sparks of the market, bring over a style of wine. And that's why I love to work with your product, Andy, is because you do have a style. You do have a quality to not just making a wine, but making a wine with a pedigree. Can you explain your vision when you're making wine, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to define, and the expression of this Chardonnay represent what you're trying to accomplish?
So primarily when I make a wine, I'm thinking about what I'm going to be eating when I drink the wine. And that's probably just my personality, but for me, wine really is at its pinnacle as paired with food and paired with very complex, interesting food. And I would say that the same journey that Chardonnay and California wine has made in the last 25 years, California food and produce has made an even greater strides in terms of the availability of great food, great produce at our fingertips. So all of my wines are made. As I'm making them, I'm thinking about how they're going to pair with food and how it's going to taste with the local produce, with the local animals that we have in the valley. And so I think this one is a really great example of a wine that you could drink it. I mean, we're all drinking it here without food, but as soon as I get off of here, I'm going to pair it with something that's going to make it even more interesting, even more focused, even more complex. So I would say, yes, this one does achieve that truly being a wine that is built to be paired with great food.
What do you think about goat cheese with this one? What about little dry stone fruit like apricot? What about jam? I would love to see some quench with my little, I'm starting to be starving right here. As much I'm testing your wine, as much I'm drinking your wine, I want to cook as well. So that's the magic of those wines, guys, is when you test the wine, we talked about that last week, it has to give you this sensation. You have to define the feeling that you're getting on the wine. And with these feelings, you have to transport yourself to your kitchen and transport yourself to what can be done in the best to make those two combination of food and wine to pair together. That's the fun of it. I really does appreciate Randy that you actually share that with us. Now, what would be your favorite meal with this?
Oh, that's an easy one. Pasta carbonara.
Pasta carbonara. That's actually a pretty good one. So the bacon, you believe, will bring over the fattiness of the wine, but the wine will, with the minerality, will cut the bacon through.
Yeah, I actually use a pancetta that's not smoked, so it has more of the fermented nice pork flavor. But then you probably heard earlier, the chickens are out there making these delicious eggs for us, and carbonara expresses the fresh egg and the Parmesan cheese, and I think really that richness, but also that focused acidity really would pair nicely with the fresh eggs. Nice.
Just going back very quickly about another business that you're running, if you don't mind to share that with us, and also what you're trying to really help on both worlds of the business. You obviously growing some good plants over there up north, but you also very, very concerned about the wine business and the wine growing, and obviously you want to have access to those organic and sustainable organic grapes. So, what is your role on both worlds? You have pretty much two business, if I understand. Do you mind to share that with us?
Yes, I was in the garden until about 4:40 when I came running up the hill. Literally running up the hill and pounded on Jeannie's trailer and said, "Help! Help! I need to do this." So it is it's two small family-run businesses, and by family I mean me and Allie. And fortunately, we have wonderful employees who help us out. But it's all right here. This is the house. This is the office. It's distracting because somebody wandered in a second ago, and but it's wonderful. It really is a great lifestyle, and it's a wonderful.
How the people in the grape growing business and the marijuana growing business work together? Is it the people getting together, they're getting along in this area, or it is starting to be a fight? Because I know that the marijuana business is taking over a lot of the land over there, and obviously the people on the land will make way more money these days, I believe, in marijuana than they're making on growing grapes. But do you think it's a conflict? Do you think the people can live together? Do you think it's an evolution? What do you see yourself involved with both worlds, and what's in implementing to the wine business?
Well, so there originally, when I was a kid, the grape growers were very anti-marijuana. They felt like it was bringing a bad reputation to Mendocino, and they felt like there was no benefit. And more recently, a lot of the grape growers also have a cannabis farm on their vineyard to help diversify their portfolio. But I think as labor has become more scarce, as national policy as well as economic forces have made manual labor very scarce in the fall, I think there's going to be an increasing conflict between vineyards specifically and cannabis farms trying to get people to pick and process cannabis and grapes. So I'm hopeful that there's going to be able to be some sort of path forward where there's more labor, an organized way to have people here to help pick the cannabis and the grapes. But I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like in the next couple of years.
Okay. You never thought to make a cannabis wine?
I would love to, but the state of California doesn't think it's such a good idea.
Ah, okay.
But
we'll leave it this way, but we'll leave it this way. But it's a thought. It's a thought.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of potential, but as of now, commercially, we're not allowed to do that. So I don't want to go too far down the path of R&D until that's.
What do you do to protect those vineyards that you're working with? Are you helping those people to be sure that they keep growing grapes? You tell them then maybe it's another business to get involved, but that's not necessarily the long-term investment.
You mean would I encourage grape growers to diversify?
Yeah.
I think in the future there's going to be a great opportunity to cultivate literally in the vineyards. Well, we're producing auto-flowering strains that can bloom in June and essentially be a very economically beneficial cover crop. And then if they're finished in June, then there's no downside to the grapes. The problem with cannabis is it loves lots of water. If you put cannabis and grapevines next to each other, you would have grapevines that look like they do in Lodi. There's blowing up. And of course you can't produce wine from those grapes.
No.
But if we can, hone the technique and more importantly, get the regulatory approval to go forward with it, growing a small row of auto-flowering cannabis in the middle of the vineyard, which is harvested June 15th, is a great way to. Wineries, vineyards would be able to have labor in the springtime because they have, after shoot setting, they have right now, there's a whole bunch of vineyard workers that are being furloughed because there's not much work to do in the vineyard from now until shoot thinning or until grape thinning in 6 or 8 weeks. And so having a little cover crop that would bring in some cash as well as help keep their workers
Yeah,
happy.
that can help to add both business together. Yes, yes, yes. And I believe also it's a lot of it's a lot of technique then in relationship with cannabis and vine. I mean, you're still growing a plant, you're still producing a